Hi, I'm Amber Caccamo from DeKalb County, Auburn, Indiana. Oh, the cars. Just drive by and it's like, oh, there's a Duesenberg. Oh, there's a Cord. DeKalb, I mean, it's such a great county. When you look at, all the counties in the state, we have a lot of unique assets that you don't find in other counties. So when you look at, right, the thing that sets you apart, the thing that you can talk about, the thing that you can stay consistent in your marketing that's going to draw people in, it's the cars for this county. So we are very lucky to have that from the tourism aspect.
And there are cars everywhere, right? There's I can go to Monterey and experience cars there, and go on the track. I go to Indy 500. But what's unique about our, niche of cars?
I was going to say definitely the history, and when you look at the history of cars in Indiana and the manufacturing side, I mean, Indiana is such a heavy manufacturing state. So I think it's more than the aesthetic of the cars. It's how cities were built, how towns were built, how families were built. So you really have that well-rounded aspect of off of the line into the driver's seat. And you get to tell the full story with the history of the cars and not just one aspect of it.
So we have the history represented by places like the ACB Club and museums, and how, especially this coming weekend or the Labor Day weekend, how can people engage with cars and that history, whether they're into cars or not?
Yeah, so what I really say, and it's kind of like my elevator speech, right? Over Labor Day weekend, there are over 40 events to do in the span of that weekend if you're just looking at like Thursday through Sunday, right? So if you love the classic cars, definitely the place to be. But we also have Fast and Fabulous. We have the, Aero and Wing cars. There's NASCARs at the NatMos Museum. Any type of car that you have interest in, it's represented here this weekend. And, you'll just drive around and you'll see the most amazing cars on the streets. And so much so that becomes so common around here. A lot of the, local people just drive by and it's like, oh, there's a Duesenberg. Oh, there's a Cord. And they don't really think about it. But for out-of-towners that come in they're like, you drive these cars are on the street, like I'm parked next to a Cord. So the accessibility of that piece, which you don't often see, is so vibrant that weekend that you just have to see it.
My favorite is seeing like a Duesenberg in the Wendy's drive-thru.
That turn radius gets to be a little bit much, but yeah, definitely.
Yes.
And I will say that, Cruz does an amazing job. Brandon at the museum does an amazing job. Each museum, everybody who is invested in the car culture that happens around here does an amazing job of making these cars accessible, available to the public. You'll see people giving rides. You'll see kids sitting in cars. You'll just see that accessibility piece that, once again, I didn't grow up around classic cars, so it was something that was always out of reach. And it was like something that other people had, but not me. And you come into this community and it's so open-armed about the conversation and the contact. You're gonna have experiences here that you really won't get anywhere else.
And I love the accessibility piece. I think about Pebble Beach, an incredible event.
Absolutely.
So I guess, can we speak to, in the grand scheme of car events in the country, why do people go from Pebble Beach or Amelia Island or New York City to Auburn? What makes this place, to me, it's a magical weekend. But in your experience, Amber, because you didn't grow up here, right? What makes this place magical?
Absolutely. And once again, not only the accessibility piece, but also the history of how long people have been coming back here, right? When you look at the first, let's say, club gathering, before there was a club, before there was a festival, before there was an auction, it was a group of 14 people with 14 cars saying, hey, I have one of these cars and I want to gather with other people that have these cars. So 14 cars. There weren't even hotels available for them. They really weren't welcomed into town. They slept on the courthouse grass. Restaurants weren't open. So because of the history of what had happened in the 30s and the Depression, and so they took a moment in time and they found a way to celebrate that and then find bigger ways to, keep celebrating that. And every year it just keeps growing and manifesting in new ways. And so really that's the piece that I think is the most special, is that we keep finding ways to reinvite, reinvigorate, re-inspire just generations of car lovers.
And now I think today the city and the county embraces it.
Well, and there are places, I mean, obviously, like we have economic development studies that says, you know, okay, yes, this festival is great and it's fun, but there are people where this is their biggest weekend of business. And if they don't have this weekend, that's the difference between, you know, smaller margins or bigger margins. That's the difference between, you know, being able to support dance classes for your little one. You know, it's just that whole local business buy-in. And I mean, our small businesses thrive on that here.
What's something about, and I'll ask you bigger picture, but small picture, what's something about the ACD Festival or that week that most people don't know of? Like, what's something that, wow, I didn't realize that they did that here?
Yeah. Definitely the auction piece. We get that conversation a lot of like, oh, I didn't know there was still an auction. And it's like, absolutely. So when you look at no matter who owns the auction grounds, who's running the Auburn auction is a brand within itself. And that has never stopped since, you know, the first year here. So they're
1970, was it 2 or 1? It's the longest running.
Yeah, and it's the first ticketed auction that there ever was. You know, the line was so long, and I spoke to Dean Cruz when I first took over the festival before I was even in tourism. He said the lines were so long off the highway, I had a hard time getting to my own auction. I didn't even know what the traffic was for, and it took me about 15 minutes of sitting in traffic saying, these people are here for what we've built. And there's history, and history is good and history is bad. And so, you know, really we're trying to take those good pieces of history and just continue it in the best ways that we can.
And to talk about for the younger generation, right? Where I hear history, I'm like, okay, like history's great, but like I'm on TikTok and
yeah,
you're on TikTok, which is great. But talk about the future, talk about the now and the future for young people.
Well, and I think that's the one thing that we do well here is that we see a story for what it is and we grow through that, right? So we're saying, yes, the classic cars are very important to us, but we see the bigger picture of car culture is important to us. And so where are those aspects of car culture? What do we have covered? Where do we need to have more outreach? What places do we need to be at to have more car conversations? And so it's just filling the gaps and saying, you know, if you like cars, let's get you to love cars. If you, you know, have a regular daily driver, how do we get you to upgrade to something that's, you know, has some sort of nostalgia for you? Or, you know, it's that constant walking people up the ladder to become, you know, maybe somebody who's not even interested in cars. And I'll tell you what, so I grew up in Fort Wayne, which is 20 minutes south of Auburn. I had never been to festival until the year I ran it. So I took the job in January, planned it according to YouTube videos, books, history, pictures, but I didn't realize the gravity of it until I walked around in 2017 and I was like, so this is Labor Day. And so you take, you know, a person like me who's kind of close, who has heard about it but never have really been, and you experience it for the first time. And then, I mean, I'm a lifer, right? There will never be a Labor Day that I will not be in Auburn, Indiana.
I think, my story is the same. You become a lifer and you grow up so close to it.
Yeah.
And there's people that fly from Europe with private jets and helicopters coming in for this event. And I'm thinking, I was 15 minutes away from this my whole life.
Never knew.
And it's a tradition that is becoming a new tradition, which I think is really cool. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We love traditions, but this is becoming a new tradition for so many families, and they're visiting.
Mm-hmm.
And they're coming for the first time to DeKalb, to Auburn, to
yeah. And not only that, so you see like you know, you have so many stories of history where like, I used to come here with my grandfather, or, you know, my dad brought me, so I'm going to bring my son. And those are amazing stories. And those are still the bulk of the stories, but it's also, girls love car auctions too. Girls love, seeing what this is all about. They love falling into cars. Hey, one of my favorite questions to ask when, I'm at travel shows is, what do you want your first car to be when you grow up? And to see the different answers, and people know, especially kids, they know more than we kind of give them credit for. So it's reinvigorating that. There are a whole slew of STEM education programs, granting opportunities for girls to get into cars, to work on cars. We do that through the NatMas Museum, and soon to be the Ford Museum, of getting these teenagers to learn to work on classic cars so this can continue to survive and thrive for years to come. Yeah.
That's part of that culture piece.
Absolutely.
It's more than an event. So let's talk big picture. We'll close on kind of the bigger picture
Yeah.
of DeKalb. You mentioned this in Indiana part, right?
Yeah.
Blank in Indiana. What is it for us, and how does that transcend Labor Day? How does that transcend beyond just this week, which is an incredible, magical week? But
Yeah.
How do people get to experience that all year round?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. So with the new state moniker of in Indiana, each county gets to choose what is best represented in that. So, I love to use classic cars in Indiana, Duesenbergs in Indiana, car culture in Indiana. And so, we're taking that. Labor Day is truly our branding staple piece. When I'm out traveling, hi, I'm Amber Caccamo from DeKalb County, and they say DeKalb County because there are actually 3 DeKalb counties in the United States. So we're competing with the one in Illinois and the one in Georgia. And I say, Auburn, Indiana. Oh, the cars. And so it is our branding staple piece, and it is what people know us as and refer to us as, regionally, nationally, internationally. And so through that branding staple, and through invigorating that conversation, anytime cars are brought up, there's always a story that follows, which I think is the most magical piece of that conversation, are those memories that you get to tap into of a conversation you wouldn't have otherwise had with a person, right? And so being able to use that segue with the cars and the stories opens us up to the largest corn maze in Indiana and all the unique things we have. Seckler Pickle Factory in St. Joe, Indiana. A town of maybe, let's say, 460 people. The history and the uniqueness that goes with that. The Spencerville Covered Bridge. Every small town community, this is the one thing that brings us together. It's what we're known for. It's what we continue to talk about, but it opens the segue of every other thing that you'll find in every corner of the county.